I started eating exclusively meat about 23 years ago when I was taking cancer biology in my undergraduate degree at University of Washington in Seattle. And I was just in this class and we were talking about how plants actually use toxins to defend themselves, which I knew already because I studied biology, I studied botany. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. But even the plants that we eat, and even the produce that we eat on a normal daily basis. And it's like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense, but presumably there's more good than bad. And then we talked about how actually some of these things were actually carcinogenic, and significantly so, like more so than the pesticides we spray on them by a large margin. There's a study in out of UC Berkeley in 1989 by Professor Bruce Ames, where actually found that the different naturally occurring toxins, first of all, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of them in each plant, and dozens of them were carcinogenic, and that the ones like specifically found in like white mushrooms that we use, those were actually 500 times more carcinogenic than the pesticides that we would spray on them at the time. So that was quite eye-opening. We started looking at all the different carcinogens that were in different produce items, like Brussels sprouts had over 136 identified carcinogens, or specifically 136 identified carcinogens. Mushrooms had over 100. Spinach, kale, lettuce, celery, cabbage, cucumber, broccoli, all these things had dozens, if not over 100 known carcinogens, and we know that they were abundant. That same paper from Bruce Ames showed that there were 10,000 times more naturally occurring toxins in the vegetables that we eat than the pesticides we sprayed on them. And so that was quite a wake-up call. I remember thinking in my head, I'm like, but vegetables are still good for you though, right? And our professor just looked at us sort of funny, and he said, I don't eat salad. I don't eat vegetables. I don't let my kids eat vegetables. Plants are trying to kill you. So I said, right, forget plants. And I just defaulted into only eating meat, because what else is there to eat? You're eating plants and meat. And so you stop eating plants. And that was my entire motivation, was I'm not going to eat any plants. And so I just stopped eating plants entirely and just started eating eggs and meat. So I'm like, well, what the hell else do I eat? And for a couple of weeks, I was just thinking about how limited I was looking at all the things that I couldn't eat. And I'm like, oh, this sucks. But after about 2 weeks, I just didn't care anymore. The only thing I wanted to eat was meat and eggs. I was really excited to eat meat and eggs. I felt amazing. My health dramatically improved in every single detail. And my athletic performance as a rugby player just went through the roof. I was much more fit, much more capable, much more able than all of my teammates, just physically. And my endurance and fitness was just through the roof. And it just kept getting better and better. And so my trajectory as an athlete improved much quicker than my peers around me. So it was a huge difference. And I noticed that for years and years and years until I moved to England. I was playing professionally, and it I just sort of slipped off of it because some of the meat was breaded, and I didn't realize just how significant what I was doing was. I thought, well, maybe a bit of breading, is that big of a deal? Is a bit of crumbing on the chicken, like dose makes the poison. Maybe it's just a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's not going to make that much of a difference. But it did make a difference. I absolutely noticed it making a difference. I remember thinking to myself, why am I not feeling as just superhuman amazing as I normally do? And I chalked it up to maybe I wasn't working as hard. I was 25. It was just over the hill, and just my body's just dying now. And because that's what people tell you, you get over 25, and it's just downhill from there. And but the main thing that did is it got me out of that mindset of I will eat no plants. And so a little bit more came in, and before I knew it, I was just eating more of a whole food, meat-based diet with whole fruits and vegetables, but with carbs and things like that as well. But I never ate junk food, really. I mean, very rarely. But I would went back to eating a more standard whole food diet. And I didn't feel as good. I wasn't having the performance I had before. I was still playing high level rugby. I played in the Canadian Premier League, and I've also played in the U.S. Super League, and I felt great. And then I went to medical school. I was playing during medical school in one of the top leagues in Ireland, just below Premiership. It was the All Ireland League 1A, so it was a top league, and that was great. But obviously didn't have the same time availability when I was in medical school. So it was just more for fun at that point. But then at 38, when I, now been a doctor for several years and just got back from doing humanitarian work in Bangladesh, I sort of rediscovered this whole idea of just eating meat and how, like, no, humans biologically actually are carnivores. That's just the kind of animal that we are. And that's what I was doing for those 5 years. And that's why I felt just so incredibly amazing. And I said, right, I knew it. I knew plants were trying to kill me, get rid of these stupid things. And I just dumped the vegetables. I wasn't eating carbs and sugar at the time anyway. And then I just started eating a lot more fatty meat because the research had come out at that point saying that actually fat's good for you. Cholesterol is not the cause of heart disease. It's actually an important, vital nutrient that we need. And so I started eating a lot more of it, and my health dramatically improved. My body habits just changed. I lost 23 pounds in 10 days, and I just started transforming, getting much more muscular, much more lean. And I just felt amazing. 2 weeks after that, I just said, right, I'm going back to play rugby. And so I went out and started playing rugby again with my team in Seattle, the Seattle Saracens, who then turned into the Seattle Seawolves, who are the professional Major League Rugby team in Seattle. And that was the first year that had gone professional. So I started playing with them, all the professional players who were, in their early to mid 20s, most of them, some of them, late 20s, 30s, something like that. And and I was right there with them. They'd been training for months. I'd just been in refugee camps, and I was in a dead sprint, and just able to keep up and practice at a very high level. And so I felt great. And even though I was clearly out of shape and overweight, I was able to move and play and perform at a much better level than I should have been. And I felt better at 38, fat and out of shape, than when I was 27, fit, playing high-level rugby and training all the time. And that was completely down to my diet. And so since then, I've really done a deep dive into the literature to find out what we know, what we can prove, and what still needs to be figured out. The first 2 weeks, all I noticed really was just everything I couldn't eat. I didn't feel any health ramifications at all. I felt great. But I was just looking at, like, I can't have that. And, I should have, I can't have that. That's a plant. And that has plants, and that has plants, and that has, everything has plants. Yeah. And so health-wise, no, I felt fine. And then after about 2 weeks, all the cravings left, and I just stopped caring about all the things I couldn't eat. I didn't even look at them as food anymore. And all I wanted to eat was meat and eggs. So I actually felt better right from the get-go. And even when I did it the second time around, again, I just everything improved right away. My energy improved, my endurance improved, my workouts improved. Some people take a bit longer than that. Some people have a dip in their energy and their workouts. Mm-hmm. I was one of the lucky ones. I just right from the beginning, I just took off. But most people, it usually only takes 2 or 3 weeks until they get into that sweet spot anyway, metabolically. So as long as they're just eating meat and water, not using any sweeteners at all, no artificial sweeteners, not taking molten sugar and all these sorts of things like that, which is a common way for people to not have as much success. If you eat no carbs at all, then you make all the carbs that you need. You make all the ketones that you need. Once you start eating carbohydrates, your insulin goes up, and that shuts that all down, right? Because that stops all the energy production from your fat stores. And I think that's in a protective mechanism as well, because hyperglycemia, high blood sugar, is actually very damaging to us. The glucose molecules physically fuse to other molecules and damage them permanently. And this is quite harmful, and our body recognizes this. This is what kills diabetics, is chronically high blood sugar, and it destroys their body from within, and then the correspondingly high insulin just disrupts our normal functioning throughout our body. I mean, hormonally even too. In women, this is a major driver of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, because when insulin is high, it actually blocks the conversion of testosterone into estrogen in the ovaries. And so women get too much testosterone and not enough estrogen, and they can develop PCOS. You can get, it can change your body habitus. You can get hirsutism, so facial hair and male pattern hair, body hair, and obviously can disrupt your hormonal cycles as well. It's the leading cause of infertility in women in America and most of the Western world. And most common cause of PCOS is hyperinsulinemia. So this is why some doctors are even calling PCOS type 4 diabetes, type 3 diabetes being Alzheimer's. And so, this is all sort of coming back to these metabolic issues, and so many other diseases seem to be stemming from metabolic issues from hyperinsulinemia. I mean, it even shuts down autophagy, replacement of our older cells or replacement of our older organelles, because your body can replace specific organelles within the cell, like your mitochondria, and recycle them into new, faster, better functioning mitochondria or organelles. And so we're seeing this in many metabolic issues, even in psychiatric issues such as schizophrenia or major depression, that they all have dysfunctioning of mitochondria. Even cancer, they all have dysfunctioning mitochondria. And so when you put people on a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet, which is a ketogenic diet, if you do it properly, then you're going to reduce your insulin, and all these different avenues of self-care are going to come back in order. You're going to go through autophagy and mitophagy, replacing your mitochondria. And after a couple of months, you're going to have 4 times as many mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective. So this is a huge bonus. And people like Professor Chris Palmer from Harvard, who's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, wrote a book called Brain Energy. He's actually doing major clinical trials in humans with hundreds of patients and showing that a ketogenic diet can actually reverse schizophrenia, major depression, OCD, bipolar disorder, autism, ADHD, and so on and so forth.
Her real name is Doris. And Doris had a horrible childhood. She had a lot of PTSD, depression, other things. By the time she turned 17, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. She had daily hallucinations and delusions. Over the ensuing decades, she tried numerous antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and other medicines. None of them worked to stop her symptoms. She slowly but surely gained massive amounts of weight. And, by the time she was 68, she was miserable, hated herself, hated her life. From the ages of 68 to 70, she tried to kill herself at least 6 times and was hospitalized for those suicide attempts. And at the age of 70, she was referred to a weight loss clinic at Duke University, where they were using the ketogenic diet as a weight loss method. And she decided to give it a try for whatever reason. And within 2 weeks, not only did she begin losing weight, but she spontaneously reported that her long-standing auditory hallucinations were going away. Within months, all of her symptoms of schizophrenia were in full and complete remission. Within 6 months, she was off all psychiatric medications and remained in full and complete remission. Doris went on to live for another 15 years. She lost 150 pounds, so the weight loss thing was secured, but much more important, she remained symptom-free from symptoms of schizophrenia. She remained off psychiatric medications. She remained out of psychiatric hospitals. She never tried to kill herself again. And when I last spoke with her, she actually said she was happy to be alive. She attributed her recovery primarily to God, that she really felt that it was a miracle from God. And she asked me to tell her story far and wide to anyone who would listen, in the hopes that it might help even one other human being spare the suffering she endured for decades.
So having high insulin is bad, causes a lot of harm. Just specifically from a metabolic issue, it disrupts our normal functioning and production of energy. But it also obviously stays up because it has a long half-life. And so our blood sugar is up, but now it's going to be down. And our body's saying this is hazmat control, just get this stuff down. Insulin stays up. Now blood sugar is too low. Now you feel pretty rotten and you can't mobilize your energy. So we say, okay, well, I have to eat more. So this is why we have to eat more. We have to eat more. We have to eat more carbs, eat more. I got a carbo load. I got a carb up so I can get some energy. It's pretty backwards. We have energy on us. We should be able to use it. And so it causes you to overeat because your blood sugar is dropping. You can't replenish your blood sugar and your energy just normally, like you could otherwise if you weren't taking in carbohydrates and having your insulin up. But it does something more insidious as well, which it blocks a hormone called leptin, which is a satiety hormone, but it also is a master hormone for many, many, many other hormones and other functions in our body. We think of it as coming from our stretch receptors. Is why we're told in the 80s you should eat a bunch of fiber, you could burn fat because it's just going to fill up your stomach, it's going to release leptin, and you're going to think that you have all this food and that's it. There's actually a lot of other receptors in your stomach that look for protein, look for fat, look for other nutrients that are not going to be satisfied just by those stretch receptors. So it's a bit sophomoric to just say, oh, you get the stretch receptor, you get the leptin, and then you'll be fine. So that didn't work. But that was the argument. But most of the leptin actually comes from your fat stores. And they go to your brain and tell your brain how much energy you have. It's like a running gas gauge. So insulin blocks that. So it blocks leptin. Now your brain can't see its leptin, can't see how much energy you have. So it thinks that you don't have any or you don't have enough. And then it sees your blood sugar dropping. So it gets a signal that you have zero energy reserves and your blood sugar is dropping. So it sends out a panic signal that says, if you don't eat now, you will die. And so it's this pathological starvation signal that says, because it thinks you're starving to death. And so you get this signal that you're starving to death. And this is why people get hangry like 4 times a day. They're like, I have to eat. They get crazy. And you see this stuff on YouTube and TikTok and things like that. And someone just freaking out in the car, like, I have to eat. And everyone's laughing at them because it's like clearly they're not going to die. But they're so upset and they feel that is exactly what they're experiencing. And so it causes you to overeat. And so it can have, it's just sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're just eating something that's causing you to eat more of that something that's causing you to eat more of that something that's completely destroying your metabolism and so many of the inner workings in our body. And just getting rid of that stuff entirely is being seen to have more and more and more and more benefits.